right, welcome everyone to the workshop. I know it wasn't that easy to find the room, so probably some people continue trickling into the room, but we'll begin on time because we have to finish on time, respect your time. So again, thank you everyone for joining our workshop. The workshop is organized by the Center for International Private Enterprise, or CIPE. You hear this abbreviation a lot. Under the program initiative to galvanize the private sector as partners in combating corruption. We call it GPS. You can see it on the banner over there. So also when you see GPS, that's what that means, galvanizing the private sector. And the initiative is supported by the US State Department's Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs, or INL. So there are three abbreviations right here, CIPE, GPS, INL. We will be using them, our speakers will be using them, so please, I just want everyone to be comfortable with those. My name is Katya Lisova. I'm a Program Director for Business Integrity and Anti-Corruption at CIPE, in CIPE's Europe and Eurasia division. And it is my pleasure to welcome all our esteemed panelists. Before I introduce our panelists, I will just say that about the goal of this workshop. Really is about showing the unique power that SMEs, but it's another fourth abbreviation here, small and medium-sized enterprises have in combating corruption. So we would like to see how the private sector initiative to address corruption and promote transparency have evolved in the last 15 to 20 years since the first research actually and initiatives on the issue started emerging. And what can be used today by SMEs willing to join the fight against corruption for more transparency, and inclusion and fairness. So we will have some time for Q&A at the end of this session. So now let me introduce our esteemed panelist speakers. So right left from me, John Kugler. John Kugler is the branch chief for transnational corruption, cybercrime, and money laundering in the Bureau of International Narcotics and Law Enforcement Affairs, INL, US State Department. Mr. Kugler supervises 3 teams dedicated to countering corruption, cybercrime, intellectual property crimes, and money laundering. His team manages a portfolio of approximately $55 million per year in foreign assistance programs and have a leading role in related US policy initiatives. Mr. Kugler had a key role in the drafting of the US strategy on countering corruption and was the lead for the US government as host of the 20th International Anti-Corruption Conference in Washington, D.C. in 2022. He has represented the State Department on the U.S. Council for Transnational Organized Crime and oversaw the establishment of the department's International Anti-Corruption Champions Award, bestowed on exceptional anti-corruption advocates each year by the Secretary of State. Prior to joining the State Department, Mr. Kugler worked with the Carter Center Conflict Resolution and Democracy Programs and was the country director for the Carter Center Election Observation Mission in Guinea in 2010. Mr. Kugler graduated from Bowdoin College and received his master's in Georgia Institute of Technology. Welcome, John.
Thank you.
All right, so my next panelist is Egle Adomavičienė. So Egle is a managing director of 2 Lithuanian companies, sugar factory Nordic Sugar Kėdainiai and Nord Suka Business Services. Both companies employ about 280 people. Egle's career in the sugar industry included many various positions, from sales and marketing to corporate affairs manager, CFO, and a board member. Throughout her career, Egle has been actively involved in transparency initiatives with the Clear Wave Initiative, as well as charity organizations. Under Egle's management, transparency has been the priority, and the employees have been involved in and encouraged to implement the company's values. Egle's background is in economic cybernetics and business administrations. I have to ask you what that means. Cybernetics, I was really intrigued by that. And Egle believes that her children's generation will continue being proud of paying taxes and living in a transparent and corruption-free country, Lithuania. Welcome, Egle. So our next speaker is Katerina Glaskova. Katerina is the CEO of the Union of Ukrainian Entrepreneurs, and Ukrainian will say SUP, since the establishment in 2016. Before joining SUP, Katerina worked as an editor and editor-in-chief of leading business publications for over 15 years. From 2011 to 2014, she was the editor-in-chief of Infogazeta Business Week and led the Top 100 project. She began her career as a television journalist and later worked in print media, Correspondent magazine, Kommersant Ukraine newspaper, and she also participated in the creation on Focus magazines and Forbes Ukraine. Katerina graduated from the Faculty of Journalism at Moscow State University. Welcome, Katerina. And our last but not least panelist, Remi Olatunbode. Remi is the CEO of the Brook Finance Limited, which is a company that provides financial intermediation and advisory services to Nigeria's micro, small, and medium enterprises, MSMEs. That's what another abbreviation here. Remi's company is a silver-listed Ethics First certified company. And for those who doesn't know, Ethics First is a multi-stakeholder initiative led by CIPE, Center for International Private Enterprise, that includes African businesses and companies in emerging markets. In essence, it's the most comprehensive database of African private companies for due diligence and business development. So we hope that Remi can tell us more about the silver listing. So Remi's experience in the Nigerian financial sector spans 30 years and includes positions of non-executive director on several company boards, from real estate to pharmaceuticals and to telecommunications. He's a member of the Chartered Institute for Securities and Investment in the UK, Haga Institute in Singapore, Institute of Chartered Accountants of Nigeria, Chartered Institute of Stockbrokers, Nigeria Institute of Management, and Society for Corporate Governance in Nigeria. Remi also has set up an NGO, which is called Abivic Heritage, which caters to delinquents, youth's education and welfare. Remi also has a PhD in leadership and organizational change. Welcome, Remi.
Thank you.
All right, so these are our esteemed speakers and panelists. So before we jump with answers and questions, I wanted to provide some background. Why we're speaking about SMEs as partners in fighting corruption, addressing corruption. So there have been some global attention to the role of SMEs in combating corruption in recent years. We see that only in the last 5 years, there've been, countries' efforts to develop integrity compliance resources for SMEs, such as Latvia, Norway, Switzerland, Australia, Finland, Netherlands, France, and other countries develop the materials to support SMEs integrity. We also, of course, are aware that in 2021, the OECD launched the self-evaluation toolkit for corruption risk assessment processes tailored for SMEs, followed by the toolkit for raising awareness and preventing corruption SMEs in 2022. And we're all aware that the United States strategy on countering corruption from December 2021 highlights the role of the private sector in combating corruption. And so this is new a global initiative to galvanize the private sector as partners in combating corruption was launched under that strategy as well. So over the last 15 years, CIPE, since we are working specifically with small and medium-sized enterprises, issued a number of resource support for SMEs for combating corruption, starting with the publication back in 2008. Some of you may be aware of that publication, completed together with the World Bank Institute. It was a manual on fighting corruption through collective action. It was actually a toolkit on how for SMEs to organize themselves in various collective actions. And again, as I just want to highlight, it was back 2008. So So that's how far back the role of SMEs have been explored in addressing corruption. And of course, it was followed by resources such as anti-corruption manual for SMEs, for specifically, I think, programs in the Philippines. And then another one, a guide for mid-sized companies that CIPE issued back in 2014. And a couple of years ago, we issued another compliance resource tool for SMEs on the integrity standards and including collective actions. So what does it all says? That it's not the completely new topic of seeing SMEs as partners in combating corruption. And they've been, we see global initiatives and country initiatives to really contribute to this. Why? Why SMEs? So just the sheer amount of people involved in small and medium-sized enterprises, individual entrepreneurs, is huge. And these are the constituencies that vote, right, in the elections, that participate in civic life. So they are part of that essential civil society. And some would say very active, proactive, with entrepreneurial spirit. And the way that the SMEs contribute to, of course, paying taxes, to GDP growth, to innovations in their societies, all of that make them very unique engine and the potential in addressing also corruption issues. And of course, there's another critical component of SMEs that needs to be emphasized here, is that the resilience of SMEs, really their financial success, sustainability, depends on the trust that they establish with local communities and local customers, because they're small. So they really need to be very close to their customers and the communities. And because of the trust, it's in their interest to adopt ethical business practices so they've been perceived as credible, transparent, and accountable. So there are different forms in which SMEs can combat corruption. I'm just summarizing for you, so that's then we'll go into the specific, almost like case studies, and you can see how this more kind of theoretical knowledge being illustrated in real life examples. So, and what are those forms of SMEs engaging in fighting corruption, organizing themselves for addressing corruption issues? For once, it's through their internal mechanisms of compliance, of training own people, of committing to certain values, of committing to certain practices and procedures within their own companies. So developing those robust code of conducts and everything related. So this is one thing. That's how they, on the supply side, can manage, can address corruption issues, can really combat corruption. The other side is more external side, right? So the SMEs can see a lot of things by being involved sometimes in procurement policies, sometimes be subcontractors to multinational organizations or other large companies, or working with state-owned enterprises, or engaging with public officials. So they're the ones who can see, and they can potentially report the violations they see. So they go for investigation so that there is a stop that put to unethical and corrupt practices. So there is the advocacy side where SMEs can unite themselves to become more powerful voice that is heard. And it's credible if they're themselves committed to ethical business practices, and so to advocate for better business environment, for more that is conducive for ethical and honest businesses. So collective approaches, various collective action initiatives that SMEs can organize themselves into for peer-to-peer exchanges, learning. So it can be benchmarking. It can be various other things that they get as benefit of being together rather than separate. So this is what we've learned in the last 15 to 20 years since the research started and certain collective initiatives started developing. And we will hear today at the panel, first of all, we want to hear from John with this opening remarks about the initiative that we are, GPS initiative, and the U.S. government efforts to promote these efforts. And then we'll hear stories, real life stories from three business representatives and on their efforts with benefits that they got from being part of collective action, from certain challenges that they faced, right? What they've learned, and what we'd like to share with you. And others, businesses or civil society organizations or donors, international organizations that would like to support similar efforts for us to combat corruption in a whole of society approach. So with that, I would like to turn to John with his opening remarks.
Thank you, Katya, for that introduction and a lot of the context. I think it's really important. So I'm here in my capacity as on the U.S. Department of State overseeing the GPS program. And I thought it might be useful to provide some context as to what was behind GPS, the overall platform and the initiative. And Katya, as you mentioned, there's an established relationship with governments and civil society in the fight against corruption, supporting journalists, empowering civil society organizations. And this is rooted in recognizing the average citizen as the principal victim of this criminal behavior, and civil society's unique role as watchdog and advocates in fighting that activity. While it may not be new, I do think that the relationship and partnership with the private sector and governments is less developed, and where it's taken longer to fully appreciate the unique role and influence these actors yield in bringing about necessary reform. So GPS was born from this realization, where we were seeing organized and committed industries drive reform in regions where diplomacy alone had failed to gain traction. And so the thought was, if this could happen organically, then what could a purposeful partnership achieve? One that we're prioritizing the principles of transparency and compliance that underpin the official efforts in fighting corruption, and align those with the values that provide stability and predictability that enable businesses to thrive. So GPS was launched in no uncertain terms, and we feel it succeeded beyond all of our expectations. In the opening stages, over 60 industry-leading corporations have joined the initiative, with pharmaceutical, technology, and retail giants sending their executives and compliance officers to participate in the Leadership Hub and other key strategy and policy discussions. These are like I said, industry leaders, household names, and it's been overwhelming engagement on that part. And yet something was missing. And huge corporations can move mountains, but they lack the pervasive, enduring presence to drive and sustain comprehensive anti-corruption work. And that's where the SMEs are absolutely essential and they're needed. The challenge, of course, is a challenge of scale. It's one thing to work with a few dozen corporations, but to organize and provide the platform and the environment for hundreds of thousands of SMEs that are present, from small family-run organizations to regional corporations, is a completely different endeavor. So the organizational ideology behind how to wake that lion, if you will, in the power possessed by the small and medium enterprise is really quite the challenge, which leads us to the conversation today, and that's through that partnership that we have with CIPE, that we really made meaningful strides in that direction. So what the implementers in GPS all have in common is that they're pursuing the ambitious effort globally to harness the market forces in order to combat corruption and align business initiatives and business interests with those of civil society and with governments to, in other words, incentivize businesses and help them make the business case for corruption reforms. So the combination of the large multinational corporations on one part of the equation and the small medium enterprise on the other side of the equation is the calculation that we've been pursuing through GPS. And sometimes, this makes for odd bedfellows, pushing anti-corruption reforms through self-interest. But it's through implementers like CIPE in order to develop that trust, to develop that environment and align interests in order to bring about that catalyzing conversation. This is something that's also something that I've witnessed myself. My father's a small business owner, and through some of the work that he had done, I could see where he would run into regulatory issues that were dependent on who you knew, and could see months of hard investment, time and resources go up in smoke when the process, as you will, ultimately led to a room where solicitation of a bribe that he was unwilling or unable to pay, and through that realization, I think really brings to heart. It's one thing to talk about shareholder value. But when you're talking with the risk and what SMEs really have on the line, these are livelihoods, and that's a much different risk. That's a much different equation, and there's something much more viscerally important to that calculation. So that's what's behind, from our perspective, what brings. What brings GPS home and why we feel it's so important, and how those two different really important aspects come together. And of course, we're looking very eagerly towards the launch of the regional hub with CIPE in order to provide that organization, provide that conversation, and foundation that this type of engagement can really embark from.
Thank you so much, John. So I just want to highlight a couple of points from John's opening remarks. So one is that, remember when I mentioned before why SMEs, right? So because of the closeness to communities, and the trust is really important for resilience, financial sustainability. So something that John added here is really the question of corruption. Hits SMEs in a very different ways than large companies, right? So, and it's really even a question of livelihood, of survival, right? So, and it's in the interest of SMEs to protect themselves from that, to maintain themselves. So, another thing that John mentioned is that. The regional hub that CIPE is planning to develop as part of GPS program, the first regional integrity hub we're planning to open up in Africa, giving our established partnership network based on the African Business Integrity Network, ABIN. So, and we have our colleague here, Lola Decania, who leads these efforts. So if you have any questions, you can definitely ask Lola about that. So, and with that, let's just move into the discussion. So I have a couple of questions that I'll ask of our panelists, and then we'll open up the floor for questions. So think about some hard questions for all panelists. So the first question I had is about when we talk about galvanizing the private sector. So what are they galvanizing around what? They have to galvanize around certain concerns. Right? And we need to understand what these concerns are. What the private sector, what the small and medium-sized enterprises would try to address through these galvanizing efforts, or by building certain collective action initiatives. So, and often, if we look at, again, an experience that CIPE has in many parts of the world working with the private sector, corruption sometimes, it's just a straightforward corruption, straightforward bribery, right? And corruption has many faces. It can be bribery, it may be embezzlement, depending on what level and so on. But often, corruption is perceived as an issue of unfairness and injustice. Something is not fair. Something is not right. If I am being pushed through increased taxes to figure out how I'm going to sustain myself by using illegal ways, it's a no way to justify, right? So using the illegal ways. But sometimes we hear from business people, small business owners, that we feel that they are almost compelled to go into the gray, in some sort of informality. And we know that informal sector is very large in emerging markets, sometimes up to 50%, from 30 to 50%, right? Even in Ukraine, I think it's about 40% now, and in some other places, so it's around that range. So why would businesses would not go into the formal relationship? Why would they want to declare the income appropriately, and why wouldn't they pay their staff the full salaries, not just half in the envelope and half clean, right? So why was this happening? So my question to the panelists, and I'll start with actually John, because we have some interesting discussion before that, and John will provide some insights on that. What are the issues that of justice or unfairness that businesses, SMEs perceive that you see that they're already organizing themselves around, or they potentially can organize themselves around or galvanize themselves around to combat corruption? And I'll start with John.
So yeah, when we were talking before, I think that the unique approach of GPS is that it aggressively stays away from prescription. The philosophy behind the program and the approach is to have a collaborative conversation. Like, what are the barriers, not from my perspective, not from the government's perspective, but from the private sector's perspective? What are the challenges they're facing? What are the processes that prevent them from being able to conduct business in a reliable and predictable way? And that can take many different forms. I absolutely could come up with a lot of things that I would want to work with people on, but I think that's the mistake, perhaps, of what some previous efforts have been. Have said, here's an issue, we want to work on this issue, and anybody who wants to work on this issue, come work with us. Rather, we're flipping the script to say, we're going to provide our support to you, but you tell us what you want to work on, so we want to stay out of the way, if you will, and provide the support where that support's needed, rather than telling the industries where that support is going to be.
Well, that's a very important note, and therefore I wanted to bring up to this conversation is that there's no prescription, right? So the issue can be anything that bothers. It can be galvanizing the private sector on a sector level. It can be on a regional. It can be on a national level. It can be around certain things like procurement or something else. So the government, in that sense, is not prescribing you what would that issue be, right? So the private sector would find out on themselves, based on their own interests, what that issue would be. The only thing that is required here is a set of principles, right, that are being communicated clearly, such as transparency, of course, accountability with integrity, and so on, and in accordance with the law, right? So I thought it's a great point to bring up to this conversation. So, Egle, maybe we'll move to you with this question about what are these issues of corruption or injustices and fairness that businesses perceive and around which they organize themselves. And you're welcome to use your own example, right, of your company joining collective action initiative in Lithuania. So what triggered that?
Okay, thank you. I'm happy to see you in my hometown, Vilnius, in the happy country. But it was not the case 25 years ago. It was a completely different situation. After collapse of Soviet Union and regaining independence, the business, or not, at that time was the collective economy, everything collapsed. There were so many bankruptcies. People were staying without jobs. And new businesses were trying to establish, but there were no rules. The business was rough, it was wild, and people were happy to get any job, not requiring any contracts, not caring about paying taxes. And business was very similar. It was, as I said, wild business. But slowly, country was creating rules, preparing new laws, introducing new taxes, and some businesses, some newly established businesses started paying those. But the understanding in the society remained the same, that business is really doing everything wrong. They are, acting like in the slavery time. And nobody understood what state is doing with the taxes. It was clear understanding that society needs to be educated. Society needs to understand where state is using money which business is paying. And as I said, there were two categories of businesses. Somebody was paying taxes, somebody was not. And I can understand those who was not paying taxes, because if you were not paying taxes, living in this comfortable situation, and suddenly maybe you want to start paying taxes, but then everybody will be very suspicious, especially tax inspection. Because if you were not paying anything to the budget, and suddenly you start, what was before? That's scary situation, right? But the explosion was when one brave woman, during the TV session in the factory of one politician, famous politician, stood up and said, "It's okay that you are developing business, dear politician," I am not telling the name, "but will you stop paying my salary in the envelope? I would like to have a contract." And that was a real explosion. And those, let's say, correct businesses in different forms said, come on, it's really a shame. It's really a shame that business is seen like enemies. So we need to do something different. We need to have an umbrella, a mark or whatever. We need to be recognized as somebody who is paying taxes. And that was actually the point which encouraged us to start some movement around this, and to educate society, to educate students, to educate schools, explaining that business is paying taxes and we could all benefit from those. And we need to find measures how to fix everything, because we wanted our kids to be happy, to live in a happy society. So that's my story. Because here, we decided that at that time, the beginning was that we were under 20. 20 companies came together, and we decided that let's call ourselves like wave of transparency, or white wave, and let's start doing something. Let's tell that not everything is so bad. So that's my story.
Well, this is a very powerful story. Thank you so much, so Egle, for saying that, for sharing this story. But what I think it indicates here is that that's we translated, I think, from Lithuanian, has been translated as clear wave. And there is this, you might have seen, there is a sign of this kind of the wave, right? So, and right now, I think there are over 80 companies in the collective action, and we have a coordinator here, so Yeva. So if you want to find out more about the Clear Wave initiative, so it's been really around for some time, right? And it's been there, it's growing, it's slowly, but the membership is growing. But that initial idea, that's remember my question was about, so what was the sense of, what was the unfairness? What is this injustice? Is that why we are paying, and when someone is not paying, not contributing to the societal goals, to the future of our children? How can we develop social services without, creating our budgets, right? So that was it, and the fight why you started as an educational program, right? As an initiative to bring more businesses, to raise awareness of what does it mean for society if you don't pay taxes, right? How it's going to develop, right? So that's wonderful. So I think to Katerina then next. Let's move to Katerina and see what was your story about that. How did you start your initiative?
Thank you. First of all, thank you for invitation. Big honor for me to be here today. You know, Ukraine now live in a very huge and very challenging and very difficult situation. But anyway, we are still operating. Our business still operating in Ukraine, invest in Ukraine right now, not waiting for the finished the war. So I'm here and I'm happy to represent the voice of Ukrainian business. We have the same situation in Ukraine, the same situation with your stories, Egele, but you know that even now we have the big part of the shadow economy. But I want to tell you another side, another story. Let's start with some facts about the Union of Ukrainian Entrepreneurs. We were established 8 years ago, like an answer. You know, I suppose everybody knows about the Ukrainian oligarchs. There's so many people, some peoples with a huge sum of money and control everything in Ukraine. More or less it's true. That was true. More or less there was true. So 8 years ago, 18 very famous, more or less famous entrepreneurs in Ukraine decided to organize an independent business association for real private sector. And one of the principles of this organization, any links with oligarch and political capital. So now we join more than 1,100 companies from different parts of Ukraine. We look like a universal association. We represent very different companies by the scale and by the spheres from different industries. And mostly we represent SMEs. It's more than nearby 80% of our members is SMEs, because the largest companies in Ukraine is the independent Ukraine, self-made businesses, minus oligarchy, so mostly SMEs. Even this is an answer. Now, from the first days of our organization, we decide to make very easy, very transparent procedure how we check how to be the part of our organization. But we decided to check. We should to do this procedure to check every application forms, every companies which want to be the part of our organization. What we check, with our legal experts, we have some database in Ukraine which shows these links with different beneficiaries, with different companies, and even now we check. We have the new criteria. We check all our companies in this collaboration, potential collaboration with aggression country, with Russian Federation on some sanctioned beneficiaries. Now it's very important for us as well. So we, even any state companies couldn't be the part of our organization, because you know that sometimes, mostly the interest of government, state companies and private sector are different, so we couldn't have these members inside our association. And we check all this, and we even make some due diligence in terms of reputational risks in the open media, some open resources, and we try to check. Every companies know that if they want to join to Union of Ukrainian Entrepreneurs, we call it SUP in Ukraine, is the first letters in Ukrainian naming, Спілка українських підприємців, SUP. We check every application, and for each new members vote our board members. We have the board of directors with rotation every 2 years, and every person in our board of directors has this reputable risk if his vote will be given for the right companies. And if we have some concerns on, for example, one voice against this company, we stop this procedure and try and start this procedure again to check some issues maybe or some facts about this company. And why we joined and what we do all together. No, firstly, I want to mention that it wasn't easy to join SMEs because there are a lot of skepticism, lack of trust between such organization in Ukraine before, and lack of trust between the Ukrainian private sector, especially SMEs in different regions and government. So we have to firstly advocate ourselves to explain what we have to do all together, why it's so important, and that it really could be efficient. This was a challenge number one for us. Number two, we advocate, communicate with our government, with our authorities in different levels. We have the decentralization, very good reforms of decentralization, and so we communicate with authorities in different levels. And we even have such project before the full-scale invasion started with the big support of CIPE. We launched the School of Advocacy School for our members, and not only for our members, it was open for businesses and for representatives of different authorities. And when we understand that it's very difficult to communicate them in one room during these meetings and master classes, we decided to divide this to parts of our stakeholders. So one day we discussed and we teach and we learn this principle of advocacy, of the civilization lobbying process with our companies, and the second day with authorities. It was more transparent discussion and more emotional discussion even, and we share our experience, and even sometimes it was like very first stage, very small level of this knowledgement about the advocacy process, why it's so important to join, and how we could to be the real voice of Ukrainian business in such circumstances in our country. I try to be very short because I could tell you for hours about our organization.
Well, this is wonderful. So I think this is a great story just to show that here's another injustice, remember that unfairness, or the issue that brought you all together, that was a trigger to set up SOUP in Ukraine. So was the fact that to create really an association of independent entrepreneurs, not those affiliated with oligarchs or set up by oligarchs, or being linked to state capital, right? To affiliated with government-run organizations, because they really don't need the formal advocacy. They can they've used many informal ways of get things done and communicate things.
But it's very easy. Sorry for interrupting.
That's right.
But it's very easy to be independent because you could say everything you think. And advocate what you need.
Exactly, to show the benefits of actually being independent and using advocacy as a formal way of communicating with the government and getting things done. So, and for that served as a fundamental lack, right? Because it was not such organizations such as SOUP before it was established by Katerina and her colleagues. So, thank you so much for sharing your story. So, and now we are going to Remy. So, Remy, I think so. You can take two stories. Choose which one. So one story is of your organization that provides funding, right, to SMEs, MSMEs. Remember, micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises in Nigeria. And how do you do that? What criteria you use? So that's one question I would consider for you. And another one is that you're a silver-listed company on Ethics First, and so being part of that community, right? So why did you decide to join that type of community? How many companies we have listed? 770 companies are listed currently on Ethics First platform. So what made you to join, as a CEO for your company, to join that community of companies? That would be very interesting to hear.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, everybody, and I'm glad to be here. I was working in the bank, one of the big banks in Nigeria, and I was there for 15 years. But one day, I was told to do something that was illegal and unethical. I resigned that day. And I made up my mind, if I had the opportunity to do something, I will not do business this way. So 4 years ago, we started the Brook Finance Company. It's a financial institution that is into financial intermediation, giving money to medium and small medium enterprises. Okay. These people are particularly vulnerable. Okay. They must earn your trust. And we decided that we run the organization on the platform of integrity, trust, and empathy. And those are our core values. Okay, so we engage, and if you check these statistics, 90% of businesses in Nigeria are in this space, and they employ 80% of workers. So that's the place to be. That's the place to help the country. That's the place to help the people. And if you can empower them, then you are helping the people. And if they can earn your trust, your business will bloom, leaps and bounds. And that's why we've gone into this space. How did we get into ethics first? A friend invited me for a meeting, and it was CIPE and ABIN, okay, African Business Integrity Network. And I met Lola there and Lars Benson. And two things I needed to know. One, what was the vision for this? And what was the strategy? If you get those two right, then I will commit. And it was just, I was blown away. It was so explicit, and they did a great job. This company, and since our own company wants to run on integrity, and this is an organization that is powering and encouraging other people to join, so it is natural for us to want to come on board. And so we did, and they've been helpful tremendously. One, they made us to sign the integrity pledge, so you are not just going to have this on your paper. We will ensure that we follow through and you do what you promised to do. Okay, they help us with the policies, anti-money laundering policies, anti-corruption policies, and whistleblowing. We domicile our whistleblowing internally. They said, no, you can't do that. If your boss is committing something that's not good, somebody must have the oversight to report what he's doing and to the board. Okay, and we got into that. We also get networking with other people, the Lagos Business, Lagos Chambers of Commerce. There, I think we trained about 50 other companies, and we have to help other people to hone their processes. Okay, I can recollect there was somebody who was into illegal business. He was exporting charcoal into other. So you cannot do this business and not give bribe, because you are doing the wrong thing. And for you to continue, you must continue to pay bribe. So we help that organization to exit completely. That line of business has gone into other more profitable, legal, ethical way of doing business going forward. So how do we get into ethics first? We were trained, and our policies were dusted, and the commitments, we got commitment from the stakeholders, especially the board, the management, and they were brought together to ensure that we're not just asking you to sign ordinary paper. We'll follow through to ensure that we put actions to back what you just signed. And that has been happening. 2 years ago, we were on green level. Last year, we got into silver. And by the time we have more transactions, by next year, we will be on gold. And we know with the advantages you have comes the responsibility on you. So with the responsibility, we don't intend to shackle our responsibilities, and it has been a tremendous experience from there. Thank you.
Well, by now, I think hearing all these three stories, right, and what motivated businesses, small business owners, to start and to galvanize around certain issues, whether it's paying taxes and getting into the formal economic space, whether it's being independent and conducting advocacy in public, openly, transparently, not the using telephone rule, right? What was in practice during the Soviet Union, right? Very commonly used, and in many other parts of the world still being used. And here it's to breaking up the vicious cycle of corruption. When you're once there, you expect it to continuously pay, because paying bribes are crime everywhere, right? In every country in the world, paying bribes is a criminal offense. And so they usually say, well, listen, you paid bribe yesterday, so why don't you pay it today? Well, we can just report you and you go to prison, right? So they use all these other legal mechanisms to actually continue the vicious cycle of corruption. But if the businesses decide at some point to break this up, right? And now we'll start using new policies, new procedures, we express new commitments, new way of doing business, right? So there are options to actually showcase, to show their commitment through public databases such as Ethics First and other such initiatives. So by now, I think everyone should, again, in the context of this conference, you might have heard in the plenary sessions and other sessions around in the last 2-3 days, right? 2-3 days already. Yeah, so that, sometimes there is a skepticism about private sector, whether actually private sector is, first of all, part of civil society, whether it can actually do something about, being the solution to corruption issues, not the problem. But I think by hearing the stories, there's a very powerful way to show how many, ethical, forward-looking people in business that want to do it differently in a clean way, break up from previous practices, think about the future of their children, about the prosperity of their countries and their societies, right? So all that power that's been harnessed and supported by state initiatives such as the INL initiative, the Galvanizing the Private Sector as partners in combating corruption. So that should be a really very convincing case why SMEs are essential part in the whole of society approach in combating corruption. Let me make it, if we have any representatives of business in the audience, or someone who will be reviewing, or I don't know if it's been recorded, or watching it, or we will distill it into some kind of publication so anyone can then review what we've discussed here. So what are the clear benefits or advantages of joining that type of collective actions that all three of you mentioned? So if you just list quickly 1 to 3, from 1 to 3 benefits of advantages for your own business that you can think as a result of being part of this collective action initiative, that would be just to distill it for everyone. Because usually they ask, the businesses, when we talk about various collective action initiatives, they say, well, what exactly I'm going to get out of this, right? What type of changes I'm going to see? How fast it's going to happen? How much have I had to invest into that? This is the questions we usually hear. So if you can just respond to those questions, that would be great. Okay, 1 to 3 benefits that you get. And the next question I'll ask you about challenges. But for now, let's focus on benefits. Remy, let's start with you.
Okay, thank you. The first is to build trust. When people trust you, when your customers trust you, there will be repeat business for you.
Yeah.
And repeat business will boost your turnover. And I dare say here that last year, we doubled the first line and the bottom line in our organization.
All right, so loyalty of your customers, of your business partners, right? So establishing a positive ethical relationship with regulators, with representatives of public sector. Yeah. So that reputation that you build for yourself by being part of this community, that's what the value that you get out of it. Excellent. All right, Katerina, let's go to you.
Oh, my 3 or only 1?
From 1 to 3.
From 1 to 3. Okay.
If you have more than one,
Okay.
well, welcome.
I have 4, but okay, 3. One of them, maybe not the first, but one of them is the influence on the policy making. You could influence to this situation, and lobbying, advocacy, the rule of law you need, the rules you need. The second one, funding and resources. It is very important for SMEs because they struggle with the lack of money and they need these resources, and we have to say them, if you are the part of this transparent community, it will be easy for you to take this money. And credibility or trust may be the same one, like one of the challenges.
So, all right. So, because of the being part of it, if you part of this community, that's what you access funds, whether it's internal support funds or it's a credit, like loans, like bank loans, or international assistance for Ukraine. It's a very big issue right now, right? For companies to access the donor assistance that's being offered to SMEs, and that's what we are supporting businesses as well in. How would you show that you actually committing your business with integrity, and you wouldn't jeopardize the donor's reputation, right? So, and we actually use these funds for intended purposes, not on bribery and so on. So, and credibility. So, excellent resources and. Participating in the policy making, right? Having that credible voice in engaging with the government and other public officials. Great. All right. So, Egla, let's get to you.
Our sign, Clear Wave, makes us visible in the society. So it's easy to recognize the products which are produced by those companies and or services, because we're also marking our letters, our emails. So and for me, from business, it's easy to recognize the same kind of business. I do not question. It's easy process. If I need to go through the confirmation process of that they are acceptable for our business, so it's easy because I know that it's already done. So one more thing, young generation, they want to join companies which are transparent. They want to join nice companies, and this sign helps them to find those companies. Being together, it's much easier to provide some ideas for the governmental institutions how to reduce bureaucracy. Because if I come alone and tell this, nobody's hearing. But if we are together, so then it's much easier.
So yeah, the same thing if you noticed, right? So again, bringing loyalty among your customers, being recognized, right? Labeling your products. I think in the offices, or as you said in your letters, in your emails, you actually put this in a label to show that you are part of this community. So this is one. Another one is attracting talented employees, right? Someone who want to be associated with clean businesses, ethical businesses, not to jeopardize their own reputation and their own future and their own career, right? Yep. And of course respond to their own values, right? So this is very important. And the third is to advocate, to be a powerful force for advocating for that kind of citizenship engagement into the reform process, right? And not being alone, but come as a group of this credible, ethical, positive force for change. So you've been you've been perceived differently, right? And you are much more impactful and effective in what you do. So I was wondering, John, if you have anything to add, if you would like to add something in terms of the benefits that you would see through for the initiative that you are supporting. What would be the benefits for those private sector companies involved in it?
Well, I think just reinforcing the points that the panel has brought up, like in no particular order. From our perspective, we really focus on making the business case for anti-corruption. So as you mentioned, ultimately it has to make sense on the bottom line. And an ethical business that goes out of business is not in anyone's interest. So to work on how to make it make sense from a business perspective, I think is something that a initiative like this really drives to the forefront. And to the second point, it leads directly into that concept of influencing policy. Governments designing policy based off of what they think is best for the private sector is a completely different animal than private sector saying this is what is needed, this is what we need to have. And then, as you touched on in your comments, I think that the two very critical parts of the purpose behind this platform of organization is not that businesses are incapable of doing this, but by having the organization and that aspect of the work being convened by a partner like CIPE, I think really transmits that if a business takes this on, they're not going to be by themselves. If Elga tilts at the windmill, says, "I am going to take on corruption in Lithuania," all by herself, it's isolating, right? So this is a way of saying, no, we're all doing this. We're all collectively doing this, and that collective action again. And when I first started in anti-corruption work, you hear a lot of, well, it's just like that. It's just like that in this country. If you want to do business, you just have to do it like this. So it's removing that sense of inevitability, and transmitting that this is not acceptable. We all know this is not acceptable, and it's not inevitable that you must engage in corruption in order to do business. So I think that's all of those things that the panel has brought up are so essential, and what I feel is such a core part of the platform.
Great comments. Thank you so much. I mean, how we're changing business as usual, right? So how to move on to see that it's not okay to do business as usual. Maybe before it was okay, and put it as a business expense, right? Tax exemption form, or something like that. So it used to be totally acceptable. Things have changed. Expectations have changed, societal expectations, so global expectations. We are as many as on these plenary sessions mentioned, we are facing huge crisis coming, like climate crisis, things like that, where the combining efforts would be the key to human survival, right? So we are talking about trust as being the key to survival. So we are no longer can afford this business as usual. I'm by myself just getting profit at whatever cost it takes and however means and use, and everything is justified, right? So we're in a different space. So having this conversation is merely not very timely. We should have done it even earlier, but whatever. It's great to have it now. And we have to recognize the reality that these collective action initiatives that we as CIPE has been working for some time, but they're still not as powerful or as populous, as say, as many of them as we wish we would have, right? So that means that something is still preventing people from joining it, some certain sense of skepticism or apathy or tiredness or whatever it is, hopelessness, right? So our goal with this panel is also bring hope and show great kind of, what is the word? Examples that can show how it can be done. And there are, of course, certain challenges. So I didn't want to leave challenges outside of the session. I want to speak about challenges because that will bring this kind of reality check on this. And so challenges is important because you can also show how you're overcoming them, those challenges. Because anyone who is from SME community is exploring of ways of joining such collective action or initiating them in their own communities. They want to lead it. They're the type of champions that we're supporting, that you're supporting under your initiative. So what they should be prepared for? What challenges they might face? How about that? Let's talk about that. Let's start with Egla this time.
So the biggest challenge that the changes didn't come very fast. We need to be patient. We need to find the partners in the governmental institutions and help everybody to understand why the change is needed. And do not expect that it will come very fast.
So, all right. So this is something that's actually very important. You might hear that kind of that notion as the short-term versus medium, long-term benefits. You know, and sometimes we're so much driven, especially in business, sometimes by short-term, benefits or short-term, advantages or profit that we are losing the sight of the medium and long-term consequences of that. And what sometimes actually pushes businesses for bribery, for engaging into bribery scams, is just kind of this short-term, just to avoid this hurdle, just to pay this facilitation payment, just to jump a little bit ahead on this line. And it will be all fine. Next time we'll do it differently. So, but that, not planning ahead, not planning a little bit, give yourselves time in advance to plan that, to avoid engaging in that unethical and corrupt practices, right? And making themselves vulnerable. Once they start paying, facilitation payments, small bribes, right, outlawed in many jurisdictions, and most of the jurisdictions in the world, they make themselves vulnerable for criminal prosecutions and things like that. Yeah. So I think what you're saying here is like adopt this medium to long-term vision.
Yes.
Right? So don't expect these things to change fast. But what does it mean? It doesn't mean you have to be discouraged. It means you have to plan. You have to have a plan, and you have to communicate it to your staff members, to your peers, others with whom your business partners, right? And anyone that this is the road we're taking, and this is how long it might take, and this is what we might expect, but we will get there. Just have to be patient and not to cut corners and not to undermine our own commitments and values along the way. Right? So, okay, great. Just to make sure that we all understand that. All right, Katerina, what about the challenges with...
I agree that sustaining engagement is a really big challenge. And now the newest challenge for us is this balance. We have to find the balance between the private sector interests and the strategic interests of our country. And we have to discuss this issue with our members as well. That looks, okay, we understand all your problems, but let's see around the situation. We have to think in another level about this problem now. For us, it's a very big challenge. For me, for our team, for our board members, and as well, it's a big challenge for our companies. More easy for us to manage. It was one of the challenges before, but I suppose we could manage with it. It's not easy sometimes to run between different interests of members, because we joined more than 1,000 companies from different spheres, from different regions, so it's not easy. Sometimes only one company could to say about its problem. But for us, it's not the call to do something immediately. What we do? We check, we answer the same companies if this is the problem for them as well. If they faced this challenge, for example, of this problem with authority or something like that. And after that, we have an analytical center in our, I suppose we're only one business association in Ukraine. We have this in-house, not so big, but in-house analytical center. We launched it with CIPE support, thank you so much. It helped us to go through this, identifying these problems between our members, then looking for these potential legislative challenges through the framework of our principles, of our strategic level, and after that we could suggest some variants of decisions, for example, or only one variant, and then engage our members from different spheres to support it, and then we have some inside procedures how to manage with this diversity of our members inside.
Yeah, I guess this is very common, right? When there's such a, again, diverse community, how we manage all the interests involved, right? And where would be the, well, democratic actually voice, right? So not just individual members' interest being promoted on behalf of the entire platform. Right? So this is, but you manage that. So you basically surveyed the companies, so they identified what is the common challenge across the, the sector or across the road. So it's not becoming just a lobbying on behalf of individual company, right? So, and in terms of managing, the mission of your organization with the strategic vision for your country, how does it fit into the national interest currently, especially acute for Ukraine? So that's definitely a very important notion to keep in mind. So let's go to Remy. What are the challenges that you faced?
Okay. Dealing with public officials.
Sorry, say it again?
Public officials.
Public officials. Mm-hmm.
The public officials have the power to grant approvals, licenses, grants. They also have the power of sanction. And most times interpret the law. If it's not very clear, if it's ambiguous, it's their interpretation that stays. I give you 2 examples. One, a regulator came to our business and after going through our books, was ready to go. I thought, okay, yeah, write your reports, but wanted something and we refused and we were marked down. Mm-hmm. So if you see our composite risk report today, it will be reading high. A good thing is that we are allowed to also have a response. But how many people will read a document this big? They will only look at the summary, which says we are a high-risk organization. So if you are comparing our organization with another organization that has given bribe, you will prefer the other organization. So that's a very, very big problem for us.
So they're sidelining you, right? So as a being ethical company, so it's like more, it's threatening. It's actually risky for them to engage with you because under your compliance program, you actually have to report this behavior, right? So that's how it works. So, and there are many other the controls that you put in place to, and of course the public officials are also liable and so will be criminally prosecuted for the same solicitation of bribery or other offenses. So yeah, it makes it very risky to involve with you. So they might just move you aside and just do business with others, or grant those licenses and permissions to others and not you. So that's a definitely real challenge. How do you overcome that?
One is to engage our stakeholders that this is not a short-term race. Mm-hmm. We are here for a long time, so we will outweight them. Okay, we applied for kind of license, and normally it shouldn't take more than a month maximum to grant the approval. We've been there for 2 years, and it's still pending. Okay, that will limit the kind of transaction we can do. But if you've engaged your stakeholders, especially your shareholders, that, okay, by the time you are comparing my performance with my peers, please note that these are hindrances that I'm going through in the short run. But in the medium to long run, I will outperform all of them. So if that understanding is there with good communication, we'll overcome this. And with collaboration coming up, more people joining, the advocacy, if it's strong, we begin to challenge the officials. Why is this thing outstanding for 2 years and you haven't done anything about it?
Yeah, so we hear the same kind of returning trend about the short-term kind of benefits versus the longer, medium and longer term, and the same is this the strength in numbers, right? The more of companies that do not pay and communicate clearly that do not pay, kind of leaving not that much space for the public officials. They just will have to engage with you, right? So if there are more companies like yours with similar commitments. So here's the plan for the remaining 15 minutes. So I will just ask, and if you, John, have I'll ask you for your comment if you want to reflect on what we just said. welcome to do so. Then I will offer kind of a conclusion remarks. I ask very specific question from all panelists to conclude the session so we can open to Q&A. So please think about your questions so we'll have enough time. Do you have, John, any reflection on what we just said?
Perhaps an interesting reflection is that the pressure that we feel on our side is almost the exact opposite of what the panelists have noted. I certainly appreciate the patience and the vision of everyone to say, looking at the medium and the long term and say, okay, this will happen, it will take time. From our side, we feel very different pressure. We feel the pressure to demonstrate to the private sector that's engaging that this is going somewhere. This isn't just something where we come and talk about it. And so for us, the short term is very important to be able to demonstrate that this is a forum for action. This is a forum for driving reform. Prior to undertaking some of the more idealistic activities like election monitoring and government work, I worked in one of the most ruthless private sector areas that's of international finance. And so I was very trained from an early age. You have to show results. You have a very short fuse to at least show that you're going somewhere. And that is very much a part of the program. So I think that our goals will actually match up quite well. We'll try our best to demonstrate that this is going somewhere, that it's worth the time and investment of all the participants, and of course rely on the extended vision and leadership of business sector who can look at the horizon to see the ultimate goal.
It's actually a very important notion, right? Between what we can do in practice, where it's going, and so from the donor side, right? So we need to show within a year or two that something is happening, right? We're actually achieving certain results. So it's very important to think about from the private sector perspective, right? For SMEs community and anyone who is watching or will be reviewing that, this needs to be kind of addressed, right? That we know about this challenge between the, donor assistance and, whether it's an international, financial institutions that support certain initiatives or individual government efforts and so on. But they need result, and quite soon. So what can SMEs and private sector can show as a result of their efforts, right? Even just to show the trajectory, what would demonstrate that the trajectory is there, that is robust, right? That is already bringing some benefits. So this is just for all of us to think how we can communicate for the mutual benefit, right? So that there is a sustained support and that there is a progress that is being made. Right? So, and with a closing remark, I would ask you to please, each of you, think about recommendations that you could share for SME community, other SMEs that are seeking ways to engage in collective action, something like you, meaning how to break up the bribery cycle, right? Or someone who think how to engage with independent businesses to advocate better for the environment because they don't want to move out of their country. They want to stay there and live there, right? And they want their kids to live with them in this country, right? So, so what your recommendations would be for SMEs seeking these ways? How to find what are those initiatives are, or set up their own, or something like that. So this is one part of the question. And so the other part, what would be your recommendations for maybe the public sector? Because you are, of course, through your line of work, you are engaging with the public sector, whether through advocacy, some other ways. So what would be your recommendations for the public sector officials that might be also looking for ways to support the private sector activism, right? If you allow me to say that. For private sector engagement, let's say. So who would like to start? Who's ready?
Okay,
ready? Okay, let's go.
Okay. I think there's a gap. Mm-hmm. The SMEs, government, CSOs, they are not talking. So there's a need for that engagement to happen so that we can actually know that on the long run, it's in the interest of all the parties to come to the table and do things the correct way. I'm told CIPE is coming up with a RIH, Regional Integrity Hub.
Yes.
That would be a good platform for engagement of the parties so that the government, the CSOs, the organizations can come together and periodically chart a course that is good for the country and good for the people. And for the SMEs, I will close with an apt description that I'm borrowing from Lola. She gave a description of like a pond that has a big shark in it and with small fishes, okay? All of those fishes are vulnerable to the shark. But the only means of survival is if or when those smaller fishes come together. Then they become a greater force that the shark cannot attack. Fighting corruption is that shark. Your organization SMEs are the smaller fishes. When we come together, imagine my own country, 90% of organizations coming together, employing 80% of the people, that's a good force that no one can resist, not even the president. Is it in their interest? Yes. Are they doing it? No. Why? No communication, no synergy. So people are docile and they can be taken advantage of. So coming together, collaboration is the way to go. Thank you.
Well, this is, again, very powerful, and I think the storytelling is one who can be very, storytelling, or I think later today in this room actually will be a showing of documentary on anti-corruption, and I think that's another way. It's like whatever people can, in terms of communication, it's not the press release, right? It should be some other type of communication that people can relate to, right? It resonates with them. It resonates the story. So I think, therefore, we kind of set up this session that way to provide you with the stories that might resonate with you as someone from your communities, and you can share with them. So, and in the spirit of these efforts to improve this communication, share the stories with, I think, again, this is very powerful. Thank you so much. And we will be, we're looking forward to setting up this regional integrity hub and bringing every stakeholders together. All right, excellent. So, Katerina, would you like to?
No, firstly, I just want to say that communication, I totally agree that communication is the key for all stakeholders, between all stakeholders. For SMEs company, I have a very simple answer, simple advice, just join. How to start doing something? Let's do. So let's join all together because you see you could attack a shark. It's very important, even if you feel this problem with the long-term results, with long-term procedures, with long-term changes in legislation. Please be working all together and join to different organizations. It couldn't be even your in the level of the small town organization, and communicate and collaborate. And for organization, how to join the big part of your private sector community, to show the best practice, to show cases, to tell stories, and to show how it works, how it have to be, could to be, and what you could do all together. For authorities to basic level, to make this legislation to transparent rules and so the rule of law and so on, it's okay. But another one, what is more important, to promote these integrity practices and these transparent businesses, not fight with them, please. Maybe it's more actual for Ukraine, but it's very important to promote. And okay, your problem is in the shadow part of economy. Let's fight with it.
Excellent.
Thank you.
You so much. Yeah. So, Egle, what are your?
Thank you. You also, expressed something very similar what I wanted, but I would say that if you really think that there is possibility to change something in the legislation or maybe to reduce bureaucracy, so maybe that it's find somebody who thinks the same. Either in business or in the institution, there are many people who want to make a good change. So that would be an advice. And make yourself visible. Be a role model. Behave properly. Behave like you would like everybody to behave.
Excellent. And John, what about you?
I would say for businesses to join, to come in with a sense of ownership. GPS or any initiative like this, whether it's GPS or another, it's not an ethics university. It's not where businesses come and listen to what the government thinks they want to have. Businesses have to take ownership over the process to say, this is what we need to see, this is what we would like to see, and even say we'll take the lead on this part of the activity. I think that there's a couple of ways that the government can support. The government can come in and tackle obstacles that are too much for a business to handle. We can plow the road and let businesses come in and do things. We can support businesses that are taking initiatives and provide our backstopping for them. And then the third and most, and just as importantly, through the communication with private sector, we can also understand when it's best for us to stay out of it altogether. So for businesses to join, to come in, proactively to say, this is, we're partners in this. We're not coming to listen, and we're not coming to talk, but we're here to really make things happen.
All right. Well, let's applaud to our session, to our panelists before we go to the questions. So thank you so much. Thank you for sharing your powerful stories. Okay, we have some time for a couple of questions. I see one question, 2, 3. All right, let's start. 1, 2, 3. Okay, one, go ahead. You could. Here it is, one, the gentleman.
Hernán Lanzara, Lima Chamber of Commerce in Peru. I want to know if this initiative is implemented for Latin America, because in the past 2 years we were in contact with CIPE representative in Bogotá, in Colombia, but they were focused on public procurement. And then we gathered almost 7,000 small businesses in our organization, and we have a committee of integrity and fight against corruption. And I think this could be very interesting for us to implement. And you can say if there is implementing in Latin America, in South America, no? Please.
All right, so we have some demand coming in from Latin America. So would you like John to answer? Or I can just say that we are planning as part of this initiative to open the regional integrity hub. So the first will start with Africa, and then there will be Latin America as well. So I think the second will go Asia and then Latin America. So yeah, we are planning to work on this, and as we are learning from our first experience in Africa, so I think the next hubs, the regional hubs, will be kind of maybe like easier. So as we are learning, right? So yes, there is a plan to implement that under this initiative. So and thank you so much for expressing your interest in this and engaging with CIPE in Latin America. Yes, please, the lady, yeah.
Hi, nice to meet you all. My name is Lindsay Smith. I work for Ethicists International, and one of my ties to SMEs is we're the stakeholder liaison for the Business Ethics for APEC SMEs initiative, which is the largest public-private partnership in health-related sectors globally. So with that in mind, I think one of the interesting things about that particular initiative is that it's overseen by 2 trade associations, which as a part of those, of course, are many SMEs, but also larger international companies. So Maybe, John, since I know that you'd mentioned this a little bit, given that a lot of these initiatives tend to at least be provided the platform for their work by larger companies, if you had any words on potentially the opportunities of some of those partnerships, but also some of the potential pitfalls and successful and non-successful initiatives that you've seen between SMEs and, let's just call them, like larger companies. Thank you.
I'll speak a little bit because I imagine the panelists would probably have some better examples. I guess I don't have any examples off the top of my mind of failed attempts. Officially, I guess that there are initiatives I'm familiar with. I think in the pharmaceutical industry of trade associations, and then I don't know if there's a small pharmaceutical company, but a medium-sized and maybe regional specific where they've been exceptionally effective. And so I think that there is a track record there, and it's just those types of successes that started putting on our radar the possibility of a more formal platform of providing that basis for people to come together. So I definitely think that there's a lot of potential there. I mean, again, that's really the underlying philosophy for the GPS in the first place. But again, the investigation into GPS was arising out of a lot of those successes that we saw there. So I think the challenge perhaps is that trade associations vary in terms of their missions and what they take on. Some are very aggressive. Some are really do try to speak on behalf of the industry. Others are more of a networking opportunity. And don't provide that type of strategic vision for their industry. So I think that would really hinge on whether something's successful or not. But I know the...
Well, so I have to say that we are out of time. So I'm so sorry for our third question. We cannot, unfortunately... can we accept it or... Yeah, so let's discuss. If you have any questions, maybe you can approach.
I will just ask it like this, and maybe later on we can coordinate between each other, because for us it would be very interesting to know the due diligence processes of your organizations. I work with the Alliance for Integrity from the German government, from the GIZ, and this is a topic. We have a multinational, multi-actor platform as well, and this is a topic that is quite important to us. And as we are all based on reputation and it's all risk-based, it would be really interesting to connect with all of you and get to know how you are doing that, especially with the smaller companies, which you can normally don't use this like big registers for. So
excellent question. Nice. Excellent question. Thank you so much. And Katerina touched on that a little bit, on due diligence of ultimate beneficial ownership registry and other ways of checking that. And at Ethics First, we have a very rigorous due diligence process. So definitely, we will. You're welcome to reach out to panelists and get this information. We have to finish our session. I would like to thank you, all of you, for your participation. I know there are 3 other sessions running at the same time. So. Thank you for your interest in this one. And thank you again to panelists and to you. If you have any questions, reach out to any of us with the follow-up questions. Thank you.